And welcome back to the Good Eye Podcast, where we talk about good stuff, inspiring stuff, healthy stuff, nonprofit stuff, things like that, things that might fall under the umbrella of good stuff. But good can also mean difficult. We're not having a difficult discussion today necessarily, but Good Eye Podcast focuses on intellectual honesty, things that we might be curious about, things that allow us to expand our horizons and maybe look at life from a different angle, ergo the good eye. And that also assumes that if there's a good eye, there's a bad eye. And the bad eye is not necessarily quote unquote bad, but we are human. We are human beings, human animals on this planet. So we at least try to look out of the good eye, knowing that there are difficulties to overcome, obstacles, filters, perspectives, etc. Interesting perspective today from my guest. His name is Mark Winn. He is a martial arts expert and instructor. His discipline currently is krav maga. He's experimented with a number of martial arts throughout his career and throughout his life. He's also an insurance agent. As I mentioned, man of faith, a published author. He's currently working on a new book. He's an inspirational speaker. He's a really interesting guy, and I really like his outlook. And that's really, in a nutshell, why this podcast exists. So let's get to the conversation, hear what Mark has to say. Thank you for your time and attention and intention. And I'm proud to bring you right now Mark Winn on the Good Eye Podcast. And I'm proud to welcome Mark Winn to the Good Eye Podcast. Mark, welcome, man.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Jay.
Absolutely. This is going to be cool. Mark Winn, a martial arts expert and instructor, insurance agent, man of faith, published author, currently working on a new book, inspirational speaker, and soon to be podcaster, which is exciting, spreading messages of hope and preparedness and positivity. Mark, man, glad to have you here. I don't know where to start. You do so many things.
It's all kind of built around the same thing. I've always known that my life is service to others. And because of that, in the last 5 years have been somewhat of a transformation, because I have narrowed it down and trying to be of service to others. I'm looking more at training development for people. I get to do that in my risk management business with insurance, making sure that people understand how they're protecting their assets and why. I get to do that in my martial arts school, in that people are understanding concept over technique and how they can better protect themselves. And then I also get to do that in the books that I write, because I like to call it impactful common sense, in that I use different themes, like in my last book, Grounded Life Lessons. I use farming as a metaphor for life, which you can actually look at how different aspects of what farmers do every day can help you from a entrepreneurial standpoint, self-development standpoint, and general business standpoint. The struggles that they go through, things of that nature. So I look at those items and I look at it from a different perspective. I guess I don't want to call it the Mr. Miyagi outlook, but I kind of look at things simplistically and say, how can I apply this to the rest of my life? And so that's how my books come about. The book that you were speaking of that we have coming out next year, Not a Victim, but a Warrior, also speaks to that different mindset. I'm actually teaching self-defense strategies in the book. So the strategies that I'm teaching will assist people in better protect themselves in their daily walk and keep them safe. But at the same time, partly why the book came up is we do all these things in life to try to protect ourselves, get the best security systems on a car, ADT, Ring, different types of apps on our phone to protect our phone. And you can only use certain types of codes to get it. But if you really think about it, and I think you and I have had prior discussions about this, there's so many things that are vying for our attention that we don't actually pay attention to what we allow in our mind. Example, if you're probably familiar with The Social Dilemma, that Netflix special, and how algorithms in social media have no heart. It's just whatever you feed on, it'll continue to feed you on. And which reminds me of an old adage, if you have two wolves and you're trying to get one of them out of your life, don't feed that one. And then that was how you're going to get them out of your life. It's something that speaks to that. So I've known a number of people that have had to step away from social media so they can kind of give themselves a mental break and an emotional break, because it kind of pulls on you. So I said that to say, whether it's social media or relationships or relationships at work, how you feel about yourself, all those things, you have to work to defend your mind. I was watching a special, I guess in the last couple of days, with Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad Ali, after everything that he went through, he had built a training camp up in the woods. And one of the things that he was saying while he was up there was being away, almost off the grid, allows you to get in touch with yourself. You're drinking water directly from the source. You're eating food directly from the source. You're taking in air directly from the source. And it allows you to meditate. It allows you to clear your mind. It allows you to think more clearly and assist you in giving a different perspective on life. And often that perspective is one of appreciation, where a lot of times we go through life on a daily basis and we're just charging. Oh, I got to get this done. Oh, I got to get this done. How I'm going to get this. Oh, what am I going to do next? Oh, yeah, I got to get that done. If I don't do this, I won't be successful. If I don't look like so-and-so, if I'm not as smooth as Jay, then I'm not going to be good at this. So all those factors just put pressure on you, and you don't even stop to say, why am I doing this? What's important about why I would want to do this? Where is that priority? Is it a priority because this is what you see other people do? Or is it a priority because this is what your purpose is? So without us slowing down and looking at how things are impacting us, you can't really protect your mind. And that's the value of the book that I have coming out next year.
Man, you opened up a lot right there. And there's a few phrases I want to address. One is, obviously, you have to work to defend your mind. And it reminds me of something, one of my mantras, which is everything's a practice. And I think that goes back to your farming analogy, the Mr. Miyagi analogy, in that big steps and long goals are always made up of small steps.
Yes, sir.
And when you're defending your mind, Ali going off the grid, it's a tiny little thing. When I say everything's a practice, like when you're sitting there maybe watching TV, instead of switching the channel, you pick up your remote, you go to switch the channel. Instead of doing that, turn the TV off, even for just 5 minutes. Maybe put some music on, maybe just think, maybe take a breath. Even if you know you're going to turn the TV back on, it's sort of like when something good or bad happens, and people often react by saying, wow, it really reminds you of what's important. Well, that stuff is there all the time, but we get a case of not being able to see the forest for the trees. All that to say, you talked early in your comments there about concept over technique when it comes to martial arts. Are you speaking specifically of krav, because you are a krav maga instructor? Can you talk about that a little bit, concept over technique?
Yeah, so I got that from a gentleman by the name of Avi Nardenia. He would tell you he did not come up with the idea or the concept, but it's something that's important to him, and it's something that has become important to me. So the phrase itself, or the concept, goes way back further than us. But the idea is, if I teach you a technique and you understand the technique, but you don't understand the concept of why it works, what can go wrong, how can you adjust, how can you adapt, then you only have that technique. So when the technique fails, then you don't know what to do. And that's the problem with what you said earlier, in that, even in cutting the TV off for 5 minutes, even that, it's like, if I do these things, what do I do now? And instead of looking at the broad picture and how it's impacting your life, when you think about how it's impacting your life, it's just a small sliver, but when you look at how the priorities in your life are so much more important, then you can kind of say to yourself, you know what, that wasn't that big. And not having that right now, or not having the immediacy of taking care of this or taking care of that and taking care of myself, really has an impact. So I need to look at the larger things. I need to look at the, as you say, the forest from the trees. I can't just operate off of a technique. So in Krav Maga, Krav Maga is all about self-defense. So when you look at martial arts, when you look at fighting, when you look at self-defense, there are three different circles that kind of cross each other in the middle. Fighting, the whole goal is to win. Um, when martial arts, mind, body, spirit, tradition, and then self-defense is how can I get away safely and get home. So it's not going to take in self-defense is not going to take into account, that I follow this tradition in order to accomplish the goal. It's not going to take into account that this is the only way to do it. And if I didn't do it correct, then, I need to go train harder. Self-defense is about understanding, really, it's about understanding a concept of placement in space. If I allow this person to get in my zone, and we call it a red zone, then what can I do to protect myself? But if I operate while they're still in the green zone, then I might totally avoid the confrontation. But I don't understand that unless I understand the concept, because a lot of times your ego can get in the way and you can say to yourself, oh, I'm not worried. I can handle this. I can handle that. And then once it's on you, and especially if it surprises you, then you're having to operate under stress, under threat. And that's not the goal. The goal is to try to maintain control of the entire situation, which is like farming again, because if you're running a farm and you're producing various different types of crops, you have to understand how to rotate the field. You have to understand when something goes wrong. Have to understand when something becomes diseased, what to do. And do I take this all up or do I just allow it to grow up with it, and what the impact's going to be? So that speaks back to concept. And in self-defense, things are going to go wrong. Anybody that tells you if you're attacked, it's going to be textbook has never really been in a real fight. So from that standpoint, if you understand it's about concept and you are adapting to a situation, and then you apply that to life, then you can do that in relationships as well. You don't have to look at it single-mindedly. I had a friend who, due to business and weather and travel, is having to change his plans. And he's going to have to tell his wife, but his wife's thought process is, this was your plan all the time. You had planned it this way. You didn't, and she finds herself addressing it to herself versus addressing it to the situation. Well, that's like looking at technique. If you see things single-mindedly and are not open to what the possibilities are, is there truth in what this person is saying, that gives you more opportunity to receive what's going on and allows you to adjust both emotionally and mentally to what you may have to do to make the best out of the situation. But if you look at it from a technique standpoint, well, this is my defense mechanism because you told me this or you did that, then you're limiting yourself. And without a higher, broader outlook, we're always going to limit ourselves. We'll limit ourselves from fear. We'll limit ourselves from worry. We'll limit ourselves from the opportunities that what our life has to offer, because, we don't always want to feel this way, but we're fairly intelligent people and we can rationalize and justify anything. So it's only when we address ourselves and address the concept of what we're doing, which goes back to what you said earlier, about looking at the way that you look at life and handling these things on an individual basis, but having a larger outlook on it. That's when you can change things. That's when you can build things out and say, all right, this is the priority. And in order for me to accomplish everything I want to accomplish, these will be the pieces I have to learn and I'll have to do. And something else that you triggered a thought on was the concept of training. Everybody wants and nobody really goes to Burger King anymore. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to plug it like that, but used to be, Burger King's slogan was "Have it your way," and people still want that microwave, lose weight fast, get smart fast, get rich fast. It doesn't take all that. Just do this. Nobody wants to train. Nobody wants to develop themselves. No one wants to make themselves go through anything to reach anything. No one wants excuses and ways to make excuses for themselves because they didn't do something or they got rejected and things of that nature. And it's only through actual training that you understand, again, going back to concept, that things are not going to work out the way that you need them to do, but you're going to have to develop yourself and train your mind and train your body to allow you to accomplish the goal. When you don't accomplish the goal that time, great. You just learned something, which I used to tell my students, if it ain't a competition, win, lose, learn something. And so if I learn something, I'm getting better for it. And I'm training my mind and I'm training my body to accomplish something greater than what I just did.
With your students, I imagine you spend more time reinforcing concept over technique, because if you don't have the concept and conceive of the reasons, the root, then the technique is sort of pointless. With your students, do you see their awareness as, say, they come to you as a beginner, and I'm sure it takes years and years and years of training just to, have some facility like you do at the stage you are, but do you see not only their technique changing and getting sharper, but also their outlook and their concept of the technique itself? Can you see that start to evolve, and that what you've been talking about is sinking in? And with that said, what do you think the ratio is of teaching them about concept versus the actual training of where an arm or a leg goes, or body weight, or what do you think the ratio is there?
I'm going to say that, I look at it two different ways, because my thought process, my opinion, 70% of confrontations you can totally avoid, right? But you train for the 30% that you can't. And that's where the rubber meets the road there. So when it comes to situational awareness and things that can happen, I've preached that so much that it's ingrained in them. So whether they're at Disney World or Starbucks, I had one of my students, his granddaughter was at a Starbucks, and someone tried to kidnap her child. And we were talking about, that situational awareness. I use OODA loop because I think it's one of the best ways to describe situational awareness: observe, orient, decide, and act. And by assessing the situation after you have observed and oriented yourself, then you can decide what you can and cannot do, and then be willing to act. In this particular case, his granddaughter was able to get, speak loudly and get the child away from the gentleman that tried to kidnap him. But at the same time, it just lets you know that there are people, these are threats that are out there. And because our situational awareness has been heightened in our training, then we don't want anything to happen. We just want to be aware. And the same way you can be aware of threats, you can be aware of good things too. I can be aware that people are there to help each other. Even this past weekend, I was riding home and I was at a traffic light, and I look in my rearview mirror and I see a couple back there. And initially they weren't speaking. I was like, maybe they're not happy with each other. And then the husband kind of rubbed his wife's cheek, and she kind of smiled at him. And they start smiling at each other. I was like, that's the stuff right there. So you don't know, how things are popping, but I would have missed that. You know what I'm saying? If I hadn't looked, I would have missed that. And that just said people still appreciate people, and that kind of gave me some joy. But if I wasn't alert to that, and so normally what I'm alert to is somebody following me. But in that case, I was able to see something great, and I enjoyed it. So your alertness doesn't have to just be looking for the threat. It could be for looking for great things as well. From a technique standpoint, as time goes on, they get a deeper understanding of the technique. That's just like any craft that you learn. If I'm a beginning writer and I find new technique or new ways to communicate things, if I am a musician and I've learned all my basics in reference to my instrument or songwriting, and now all of a sudden I'm getting a deeper understanding of how I can take this thing to the next level, then that light bulb goes on. You're like, oh, that's why that worked. That happened to me yesterday with doing private lessons for one of my students. We were working on some ground technique, and he was like, oh man, I wish I had that when I was growing up. That things would have went a whole lot different. And you just get an understanding of that. I have martial arts instructors that I teach, and a lot of times when we get together, there's techniques that I have to teach them for krav maga. but at the same time, that broadening of the concept and how they're looking at things. Because, and this is what they've told me, not that what I'm saying of myself, that they gain as much through the concepts and conversation piece as they do from the technique, because we're sharing those experiences that allows us to grow in our journey.
Cool. Man, you're all about the details, and that's awesome. Speaking of details, you were talking earlier about the concept of self-defense and understanding the why, obviously, as much as the what, the concept over technique. And it reminds me of the approach, or I should say the integration of Eastern medicine into Western medicine, whether it's green tea or hot and cold foods. I mean, not temperature, but you know what I mean. A spicy is a hot or a cold or an earthy food.
Yes.
The elements, the 5 elements. And in the West, we tend to treat symptoms and not root causes. You know, if you experience pain, you take a pill, the pain goes away, but the root cause is still there. When it comes to details in martial arts, and I guess specifically Krav Maga, even though I know you've practiced a number of them, where are the, and this is just a curiosity question on my part, where are the transitional moments? Because people say, I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time to take care of myself. I've got to work. I've got a family. And all that is true. But you can find mindfulness in the transitional moments, whether it's getting up from a desk and reaching for a doorknob, all of a sudden being aware of where you are, where your mind is, where your body is, what you're experiencing. The transitional moments are the details. Where are the details? And I'll speak for you and say the easy answer is they're everywhere. But the transitional moments in martial arts, the physical movements, because that fascinates me. You said nobody's who's never really been in a fight can understand the experience. Where are those transitional moments when it comes to movement and martial arts?
Sure. And I'm just getting so tickled and, you know, in our discussion, because I try to kind of elaborate on. So with Krav Maga, meaning contact combat, we're trying to create a maximum impact with a minimal risk. And there are a number of different styles of martial arts, which Krav Maga has taken practical application of certain techniques to assist us in better defending ourselves. And again, this is what the Israeli Defense Force use for their protection. And as you probably aware, you know, they're under attack often. So their readiness has to be pretty high and has to be effective, because both men and women train and serve in the IDF. That being said, when you start to understand things like balance and footwork, which comes from, for us, you know, comes from Aikido and boxing, leverage points, balance points, Aikido, jiu-jitsu, judo, wrestling.
That's exactly what I'm getting at. Exactly.
Yeah. You understand when you start to see how easy it is to control a joint versus to fight muscle, or when something is pushing and you allow it to go through, you yield to it. Like in Tai Chi is a lot about yielding, right? I yield to your force in order to stop you and take you in a different direction. And Aikido's like that, and Hapkido can be like that, Judo can be like that, and the list goes on. But when you start to see what's actually going on with the body as things move on, then it's pretty exciting to see that. You mean I could just do this because they did that? You know, it's pretty exciting. And so that those aha moments, that light bulb moment, in reference to that, as a number of my students, and it's funny because I'll talk about those things and I'll talk about the concept, and after class we'll just be talking about something general, and they'll say, "Well, that's just like blending in Aikido." You know, when someone is trying to take a conversation a certain way, you don't have to be abrasive with it, but you can ask a question that makes them shift, and it blends with what they're saying, but allows them to think about what they're saying, and it allows you to introduce another concept or idea that they're willing to consider. But if I meant it with force and was just abrasion to abrasion, then nothing would occur. Nothing would be seen as something that both of you could grow from.
Man, that is the perfect answer. You You actually answered my next question, which was how to apply those practices, if you will, or those techniques to everyday life when you meet resistance. Because, whether someone believes in karma or not, I always say, karma may not be real, but if you act like a dick, people are going to avoid you, and that's karma.
Absolutely.
So if you are constantly abrasive and resistant to everything, you're going to be met with that energy. Then that's not to say that you have to be a pushover, which is pretty much everything you're about. Nobody would mess with you if they knew your training, but you're the most easygoing, flow, passive guy on the outside. But you've got the train. You're ready.
Yes, sir.
You're ready. So you talked about it a little bit, but tell us what Krav Maga is. Sort of, you don't have to go into the long history of it, but it's kind of unique. And I think a lot of people, especially in the West, are not that familiar with it. Everybody kind of knows karate and has a basic understanding, or Tai Chi or something like that. Aikido, you mentioned. What is Krav Maga?
Yeah, that's another thing why I love Krav Maga. So you just kind of piggyback on what you just said. How were we introduced? Right, we served in wars. In World War II, caused us to be influenced to judo and karate. Korean War introduced us to Korean martial arts, and the list goes on. So these different wars and conflicts and so forth allowed us to connect with masters, and even with us bringing it back, some people stayed connected and some people did not. And in doing so, some people created systems from, something and I know something and he knows something, and let's put it all together and create a system that we can use for martial arts. So that being the case, again, some things stay traditional and some things stay like maybe American karate or American martial art, because again, you try to put something together. That being said, with Krav Maga, again, Krav Maga just meaning contact combat. Historically, that being their close quarter, all right, or kapap, krav el panim, which means face-to-face contact. These terms were kind of synonymous, and as time went on, Krav Maga was used more as a name. That's the same thing could be said for Hapkido and Hapkido. They kind of battled, and Hapkido kind of became the name that people identified some of those techniques with more than with other things. So, like I was saying earlier, with Krav Maga, one of the reasons I love it, it has given me a much greater appreciation for everything that I learned prior to, and being able to blend it and use it together in concert to achieve your goal. That is so cool, because if I look at boxing alone is not going to assist me on the ground, but it's going to give me footwork to help me avoid and give me striking ability. Aikido is not necessarily going to help me on the ground, and it's not going to help me with a very aggressive striker that's coming at me totally differently than I'm used to training in Aikido. So from that standpoint, but the blending, the turning, the yielding and maintaining my balance, all those things assist me in my self-defense. Karate aspects of Krav Maga, the way that they block, kick, punch, the way that we do it in Krav Maga with 360 blocking and various attacks with strikes. Again, those modifications are functional modifications. They're not changing things just for the sake of changing them. We want to make them functional so we can better protect ourselves and allow us to do the next thing. Things that are unique to Krav Maga, like bursting and crashing, certain types of arm controls that are, more specific to Krav Maga. What some people might call an underhook or a net. These types of things would make it more effective. And so when people ask me, well, if you're in a self-defense situation, what would you use? I would use Krav Maga concept, because that's what Krav Maga really is about. It's about a theory. How can I create a maximum impact with a minimal risk to myself? So that kind of goes full circle. If that's the concept, what we do, then it gives me opportunity to do different things. But if I only think with a mental singularity that this is the way I have to do it, and this is the only way to do it, I'm missing out on great opportunities to handle a situation. There's a saying: you don't box a boxer, you don't kick a kicker, you don't wrestle a wrestler, because if you do, you end up playing their game. And I hate, but there's so many videos on YouTube of people. But if you think about it, if you watch a video of people fighting on YouTube, you will see if it's a street fight and someone starts punching, then both of them are punching. If someone starts wrestling, then both of them are wrestling. So it's whoever comes out on top with that. In Krav Maga, we don't hold to that activity, because our whole goal is to get home to the ones we love. And that's what Krav Maga is actually about. It's more about love for self and family, to get home. I remember one of the first classes I ever did at my school, and we were talking about that why. And I had two students that never had a confrontation before in their life. And I asked her, I said, what would happen if Mike didn't make it home? No, I'm sorry. What would happen if you weren't able to come home to Mike because somebody attacked you? Her ears went up like a Doberman pinscher. She's like, oh, that's not happening. I love that man. I'm going to get home to him. And that's a warrior mentality. And that's what I teach. I teach a warrior mentality, not a fighter mentality, but a warrior mentality. A warrior wants to protect themselves and those behind them so that they can get back home. That's all that's important to them. They want to complete the mission and get back home. And so it's because that's what we're about. Everybody can find that why to why they want to get back home. Everybody can find that why if they look deep enough. I use myself, doing something like this is, you can put me in front of, you can put me, literally, I lie not, you can put me in front of 10,000 people and I feel comfortable speaking, but I hate being on video and I hate being recorded. Mm-hmm. So I have to get over myself.
We're not recording.
In order to grow.
No, we're not recording this. Obvious questions. You probably get this a lot. Have you ever had to use your training in a threatening situation?
Yes. So listen, and I'm glad that you asked that, because it's twofold. Have I had to use it mentally? Yes, because the way that I used it mentally allowed me to avoid the physical confrontation. I was able to look at the situation. Now, I was ready to go to the physical confrontation. I had a situation one time where I was leaving my street location office in my risk management business, and I was working late one Monday night, and I get outside and there's a white van parked beside my car. And inside it, I could see that the passenger sliding door is open and someone is smoking a cigarette. So I'm like, either this is going to go over very well or this is going to go over really bad. So what I did was I gave myself wide breath going around the van. And now I'm at the back of the van in the back of my car, so I can see any movement. And as soon as someone moved, then I would be able to act appropriately. But if I had not been thinking that way, and I just went to my driver's door and said, oh, it's no problem, I got this, anything could have happened. It could have been 2 or 3 guys in that van. But the fact I approached from the way I approached, they would have to open and then turn back to get to me. So, and fortunately, it did not turn out the way that it could have. And the person was actually on a smoke break from a business that they were in. But my situational awareness said, act appropriatly. I've had situations where, this guy's big and that guy's big, and, I'm not a small guy. So they want to show who's alpha male, and they'll approach you with just the meanest mugging look on their face. And as they're approaching, I look at them and I say, hey, how you doing? I'll give them a big old smile, and boom, just melts them. Yeah. This melts them. So I said all that to say, you have more tools in your toolbox than just hitting them or striking them or wrestling them. You have more tools and you have to be able to utilize them. I don't even utilize that particular skill to check. Somebody's looking like they're kind of disturbed, and I'll just say, hey, sir, how you doing today? And if they don't speak, I check that too, because that may mean that either they're preoccupied or they could be up to no good. So now I'm on alert and I will act accordingly. But you don't know unless you use those types of skill sets. If you're always ready to go to your hands, then you're not giving yourself the option. Anytime you go to red alert and you're ready to push the button, you take the options off the table that will assist you in protecting yourself. But if you, and again, and it goes back to personal relationships and business relationships and customer service and everything else. If I'm only willing to go straight to red alert when something's wrong, then that might put somebody at peril. I've seen situations, hopefully you haven't seen too many of them, where someone just, treating someone in a customer service situation like they are so beneath them. And, it's the first thing that's wrong. I need a manager and you're going to lose your job and this, that, and the other. And I had a situation one time where a lady attacked another lady. And we found out later that she had just lost someone. And because this person didn't treat her like a person, it was at that point that she actually snapped. So you never know what somebody's going through. I was listening to a podcast earlier today where a gentleman who you look at him and you say, oh, he's got it all together. He's fit and he boxes and he lifts weights and this, that, and the other. And he bumped into somebody and the guy kind of took it personally, but tried to play it off. And he just kept on meditating on it. A couple of days later, he found out the guy committed suicide. You never know what's going on with somebody. So you can't just approach everything on red alert. I've had cases where I've had to deal with people that had mental health issues. You don't treat it the same. You look at what it is and you adapt appropriately and to resolve it. And in my particular case, I was able to talk to the gentleman and he kind of calmed down, which allowed us to work with him. But he was already on red before I got to him and was making comments like, they touched me. They don't know the rules of engagement and I'm getting ready to do so-and-so, So by me being able to calm him down and meet him where he was and not talk to him in any disrespectful manner, because a lot of times, if you're mentally ill, I should only have to talk to you a certain way or deal with you a certain way. You're still dealing with an individual. And because I'm dealing with an individual, I would want someone to treat me the same way I'm treating them. And in that particular case, everything panned out and he calmed down. So again, your bag of tricks is way more than just technique, way more than just technique. It's your mind, it's your purpose. I've had situations where I had a gentleman try to embarrass me. I was teaching for a self-defense program. And I was teaching kids and I would finish all my classes and I was going to leave. And I got all my bags and it's kind of bulky pads and all this equipment. And I'm walking out. And at that same school, they had a league basketball team and the coach was in the hall with the players. And as I walked by, I bumped into one of the players and the coach just went off. Did you see how you just bumped into that man?
Oh, and on the player? Like, he unloaded on the player? Not you?
He unloaded on me.
I
was, and at that time I was teaching like a karate class. So I'm still dressed with black belt and everything. And he's just trying to unload on me. And so my first mindset, which would be many people's mindset, was, do you know what I might do to you right now? But I had to think about that thing. And I looked at the youth that were in there and I was like, all right, we already have one adult that's not acting appropriately. Do I want to be an example here or do I want to act just like him and just give him red because he gave me red? And I put my bags down and I asked which gentleman I bumped into. And he said, that one, why? And I walked over to him and I shook his hand and bowed to him and apologized. And then the coach had to make himself look good. So he goes from screaming at me to, now see, gentlemen, that's how all of us should be. If you have a situation like that. And I just left it alone and went on about my business. So a lot of times, I'm going to try to be the better person because there's so many examples where people are not at their best. And if people don't see people being a light in the world, then they won't try to be a light either. And so that's kind of important to me.
Yeah, great points. Great points. And you took what I had asked you about originally, having to use your training, and made the point that I was going to follow up with, which is great. And that is to use your awareness, not just in situations where you might perceive danger, or as you say, go to red, which I like, but for moments of kindness. And like you said, you don't know what someone's dealing with. There's two sayings that I just love. One is, every mule feels its pack heaviest. You know, no matter what you're carrying, somebody else is carrying something and it feels equally as heavy to them. And of course, everyone's battling something is the second. And you addressed awareness and adapting appropriately, which there's not a lot of, or I should say not enough of these days. You know, somebody's having a bad day or somebody's just being a jerk. They're probably suffering in some form. And that's not to say it's any easier on you. I mean, the fact that you were able to analyze that situation after bumping into the young person so quickly, a lot of people can't do that because our fear and our anger possesses us. You know, we're not able to step out of it and identify the fear. If you can see the fear as an object or something, then it can't control you, or it can control you less maybe. I'm curious what you think of and whether you watch or are a fan of sports like UFC and MMA, because a lot of those guys, no matter what people think of it, there's a lot of training that goes on. Some of them are grapplers, some of them are boxers, some of them are wrestlers. What do you think of the sport? Do you have a favorite? Do you watch it? What do you think?
Yeah. So one of the things, you know, with UFC, with MMA, everybody's going to have and that's that, and I hear another metaphor for life. Everybody's going to have a specialty that they're excellent at. Just like you pointed out, one person's going to be excellent in ground fighting. Next person will be excellent kicking. Next person's going to be excellent with their hand techniques and their combos and so forth. And so, but it always is going to take more. So to win, because you have to understand not just what you can do, but what the other person can do, and to be able to counter or handle what they do. And I use the krav maga, for example. If we're on the ground, our rules are don't let the person put you in the worst position, stop them, and then get back to your feet as quickly as possible. So with that being the case, in a UFC match, in an MMA match, yeah, you did get me off my feet. Now I'm on my back. Well, I still have to defend myself. And it takes so many coaches, you know, you have strike coaches, you have conditioning coaches, you have coaches that assist you with jujitsu, wrestling. You have all these different types. It takes a large team to create a successful fighter. Mm. Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It takes a village, right, in order to create success. And if we were to, you know, and like I said, and it's all towards the goal, right? So if we were to do the same thing and stop trying to do everything by ourselves and get coaches that can assist us in being better at this and better at that, it doesn't mean that we have to be best at everything, but we have to have a deeper understanding so that we can do the things that we're not good at. And that's where we all fall down.
You know, it's frustrating sometimes when you're a curious person or someone who considers a lot because you want to learn so much about everything. You just can't. But to be open to it, to be open to what the world and what the universe offers is super important.
Absolutely.
Well, cool, man. Mark, I appreciate you being here. We don't necessarily have to wrap up, but I appreciate all your time. People can find you at Winning Warrior Krav, KRAV.com. And your book that's going to be coming out, Not a Victim, but a Warrior, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And where else? Anywhere else people can find out about you and what you're up to?
You can check us out on Facebook. I'm trying to do better in creating video. My instructor, he's excellent at doing that. He has more assistant instructors than I do. So while they're doing drills, he'll videotape them doing things. And the reason that's important, it helps to create community and help people to see themselves in that community. Mm-hmm. And that's what I want to have for my school as well. We have a good community. I've had people, military, law enforcement, instructor level and above, and other martial arts. And one of the things that they say about our school is they feel comfortable there. They feel like family there. It's not an ego trip. It's not, I'm better than you and that's why you're here. It's, let's learn together. And we all end up sharing together because of some of the folks that have been in the military or law enforcement, or even in a street fighting situation. With them sharing what has happened to them, it increases us all. And that's where the value is, increasing us all. So it doesn't have to come from, the information doesn't have to come from me. It just be real information that can assist all of us and on the climb up in our lives and having a deeper understanding of things, because a lot of cases people don't have an understanding and they just take it for face value, or they don't take it at all. They'll look at it from the standpoint of, and I'm not going to call on any industry, but there are some industries I can think of where people are working with the public and they act like nothing can happen to them. You know, they're good if they carry a weapon for self-defense. They may not, and that can be a force multiplier. But if you don't practice with it, if you don't know how to get to it, if you don't know how to use it effectively, it could be used against you. Or if you just think, I've never had anything happen to me yet, so I must be good. Nothing's going to ever happen to me. You can't operate from that. You know, if that's the case, why have locks on cars and doors? You know, because nothing's happened to you yet. So I guess you should be safe to do that, right? Or why not just leave your child out in the neighborhood? Because nothing's ever happened to them yet. So I guess they should be good. You know, there are certain reasons why you need to do these things. And that's because there is bad in the world. And the fact that it's bad in the world doesn't mean there's not good in the world. There's a lot of good in the world. And I wish we'd see more and more examples of that. But the fact that there's bad in the world, you have to protect against the bad. You don't have to seek it out. You don't have to think that everybody's bad. You just have to be on alert. And by being on alert, you're going to see good stuff and you're going to see bad stuff. But, you know, we focus and build on the good and we learn and grow from the bad so that we can not only just help ourselves, but we can help somebody else. So so from that standpoint, I don't, you know, like I said, if, you know, whether you're a gun person or a knife person or a mace person or whatever type of person you are, it's not just enough to have those things, but you have to understand how to use them so they're not used against you. And the same thing goes for your mind and your body. If I'm, not that I'm a girl, obviously, but if I was an attractive girl, you know, a lot of times that's going to attract certain types of people. But at the same time, I need to know how to retain myself and retain my spirit, because, you know, whether it's a guy or gal, there are some smooth talking people that will try to get close to you. And then next thing you know, you're trying to get them out of your life, but they're so dug in, it's going to take double work to get them out. So with that being the case, again, you have to understand what you're facing and how to address it. And that in of itself is mental self-defense. And from a regular self-defense standpoint, again, we talked about when I first started, having an understanding of those zones, those perimeters. What can I do? What can I not do in these perimeters? And re-evaluating and resetting myself so I can be successful in all of these environments so that I can win. If I could leave you with one thing, everyone, and this is my personal opinion, this is my personal feeling and my personal view, I feel like everyone is here for a purpose, no matter how long or how short you're here for. And that being the case, don't allow someone to keep you from your purpose. Don't allow fear to keep you from your purpose. Don't allow doubt to keep you from your purpose. Don't allow the opinions of others to keep you from your purpose. Move forward. And in Krav Maga, we use the word kadima, which means forward, drive. Keep fighting, keep driving, keep finding out what you need to do, understanding the concept of what you need to do so you can improve your life and fulfill your purpose in life. And that way you can live on. I could die tomorrow and there'll be a number of people that remember my name or remember something that I did, but I guarantee you, I have planted enough seeds in people that I've come across. And the way that I look at it, when my friends pass, I try to take something that's the best of them and apply it to my life so their legacy will continue to live on. So live your purpose, create a legacy, and continue to impact other people's lives.
That's where we'll leave it.
Yes, sir.
That's great. Man, Mark, thank you so much, man. I love talking to you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Best of luck with the book and the podcast that will be out sometime next year, and your practice and everything. And again, thanks for your wisdom, your words, your vision. I appreciate you taking some time here today.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate you.
Thanks again to Mark for hanging out and lending some perspective. That's what this podcast is all about. You can find out more about Mark at Winning Warrior Krav. That's Krav, winningwarriorkrav.com. His book is called Not a Victim But a Warrior. Interesting guy. Check him out. Get in touch with him. And get in touch with me if you'd like. You can email me here at goodeyepodcast@gmail.com directly. You can also hit me up directly at my regular email for all things Smack Sound. Smack Sound is kind of the umbrella of all the stuff that I'm into these days. Primarily trying to spread curiosity and interesting thoughts and creative endeavors and things of that nature. So J@jsmack.com is my email address. Find out more at goodeyepodcast.com and jsmack.com. Thanks again for your time, attention, and intention. And until next time, try to look at life with your good eye.